Welcome, everyone, to episode 10 of the Total Relationship Podcast. I'm Kim Cochenour, COO at Forum Wealth Advisors, joined by my co-host, Tyson Ray, CEO of Forum Wealth Advisors. Hopefully, since you're here, the concept of the total relationship is resonating with you. You understand the traditional molds of financial advising have become outdated, and right now you're understanding people over performance and pie charts is actually resonating. So we're really here to talk to you about some of those things that might be keeping you from taking that next step. We're excited to jump in with you today. Tyson, the importance and impact of reevaluating how you're running your practice. You actually went through this yourself. So I'd love for you to share with everyone what finally made you want to make that shift.
Early in the business, early getting into the career, everything was money. Assets under management was money. Production was money. Commissions were money. Paychecks were money. Revenue was, it's like everything was money. And I tried for a while to kind of shift my mindset and kind of remove the dollar sign and just pretend it's points like a game, right? Mm-hmm. And try and remove the feeling like it was never enough, right? It's always more money, right? You can't be big. You always got to be bigger. Yeah. And as I said in the book, it was also interacting with a client who was at the end of her life, and looking back on her life, I went there more frequently than I could have because I was getting more out of the conversations. The conversations were so rich that it was worth my time. And what I was realizing is that here she has this, several $1 million that she's referring that I'm like, oh, that's a lot of money, right? But it meant nothing to her because she expressed to me, couldn't do anything with it. Black ink on white paper, she would say. And it helped me. And along the way, as talking to her, I realized that as she would have wanted to do things, no one encouraged her to go do them. And that's where it started like helping me realize. And I wrote down on a piece of paper once, like, my job is not to make people more money. My job is to help people figure out what to do with the money they have. Now, that may mean you need to invest it because you're going to need to beat inflation and have more for later because you're going to need more money later. But I made a mental note, like, I don't want to work with anybody that's just about more money because they're never satisfied. It's never done. It's never enough. Something's always done better. And can I try and you have no control over that, by the way, in the markets and what the future is going to hold. And so could I try and rethink a way of going about this business that I could have an impact that I actually could control and I could make a difference and I could feel good about? And part of it became giving people permission to actually spend what they have with the guidance or the understanding of, and the truth of, hey, I'm in financial services. I earn a fee off the assets. The only way I can make more money myself off of that is the assets have to grow, which becomes kind of difficult given the fact that most of our clients want to live off the growth, right? So accountability, but I don't want to sit here and just make you more money. So down the road, you have more money and I made more money. I want to get out of bed in the morning and be excited to find out that we did that home remodel, or we bought that vacation home, or we took that family vacation, or we had the money to take care of you or fund the cow or whatever it is. And that was more enjoyable to me. And that's kind of how I defined success more. It's like, hey, when I went to a client and said, hey, let's take this money out of this investment that has done well and now go in, because what goes up goes down. So it had gone up. Let's take the money out of what had gone up, maybe before it goes down, and let's go pay off your mortgage now that you're retired and be debt free. And the joy of basically looking at them and they're like, oh, do you really want to do that? And I'm like, well, I don't get paid to tell you that. Like, I get paid if you leave it in the account, we'll, try and make more money, but let's flip it on its head, based on your premise of you don't want to pay it off. Okay, then go take out a bigger mortgage and give it to me so we can invest it with the markets at the all-time high. And they're like, well, I don't want to do that. I said, well, there you go. That's the answer.
That's basically what you do. Yeah. That's what you're doing. Yeah.
And if you don't like it, you go to mortgage again and come back and make investments again. But the point is that, and then I'd ask him 6 to 12 months later, like, how does that feel? Like when you have to experience it yourself because you won't know until you do it. It's like walk into the house
And
And
no, it's
there's
yours.
no one's got a claim on that title. It is yours. The bank
Yeah.
doesn't get to take it, right? And that's just that I think just builds foundations within the relationship with clients. It's like, hey, that's what this best interest is, right? That we're trying to legislate. It's not a checklist on a form that you reviewed a portfolio or an investment objective or their risk tolerance. It's what do they need to live off of in the next 6 to 12 months? How are you enhancing and reducing their level of concern or worry about their portfolio or their life? How are you advocating for them to live their best life and take care of those that they love? Um, yeah, it's just an entirely, and it's so missing in our get rich quick, lotto driven, meme stock world that we're in right now.
Yeah. So
And I
I
think, and then with social media, it's like people are thirsting to have these relationships at this level.
Yeah. So for the advisor who's already has the relationship, but they're trying to make the shift. They've been basically brought up in the old way, I'll call it the old way of how they build their practice and make their money and interact with their clients. They're going to have those objections to how to do that, but how instead of having to wait till there's a client who's nearing death and realizing they didn't spend any of their money and the advisor missed the mark on helping them actually live their life with the money that they worked hard to save, like how do you get the advisor to start making that shift before they get there and deal with that regret? Or do they have to have that regret before they like kind of have that moment to make that change?
Um, I think one, we're trying, that's why we did the total relationship book. It's why we're doing this podcast. It's why we've put the website out there, because we're trying to give them tools to help equip them to do it. That is easier than how we got here. How
Mhm.
we got here was it was a blank legal pad, and that we'd ask them the questions on the cards, and we'd fill out the legal pad with the answers, and then we just keep the legal pad. The next time they came, we'd pull the legal pad out and turn the page and ask them kind of updates. Eventually, that evolved into this is really cutting edge. Ready? A Word document. Now that's a
Wow,
software,
you're really
right?
dating yourself by talking
Yeah,
about
that's a
Word like
software.
it's new
It's on a
technology.
screen. You can type it on a computer. You can reorganize it. Oh, here's key one. You can save it, update it, and we just kept that in a file. Um, then as the team got bigger and it wasn't just me having the client meetings or updates, or I wasn't the only one in the room, we realized that we needed to kind of build out our CRM or build out technology so other team members can see it without having to have the legal pad or having to go into a file and find this document. And so part of it is just giving yourself permission or realizing the value of capturing what these clients are telling you and then sitting on it, because you can't maintain all this. At some point, there's only so much information that can go in your head.
Oh yeah.
Um, and by writing some of this down or capturing some of these answers, for me, it's like I have the expectation of my team and myself that I can go back to any client's record, like a medical record, right? And open the chart effectively and see the last time we've contacted them, to see the last the last update we had on their ailing parent, or did they pass or not pass, or did the child graduate college, or did they get the career, or are they having the baby, or did the health change? Like I see the snapshot and the date and time when these last updates were given, to effectively, that's where I pick up the conversation.
Hmm.
It's like, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Client, the last time we talked, these things happened. Now where are we at? And get the update. Um, and it, I don't know how other advisors do it other than the update is the last time the portfolio was worth this and now it's worth this.
Yeah.
Um,
Or they're not contacting their clients on a regular basis and they have to put in a service system to start reaching out to them proactively instead of reactively to do something about selling a stock, that they're actually seeking to have consistent service with their clients so that they can have a cadence of following up on the regular life things that actually matter to the client.
So that's another interesting point, right? It's like if the only reason you have to call a client in a volatile market environment that we've been in for decades, and the headlines are like the world's going to end for any number of reasons, and you have to call the client, like your service system, to call the client about the portfolio and bring up how are you doing relative to how you feel about the current news, the current environment, and the future of the world, and in foreign affairs and the economy and the government. And it's like, puke. Like, who would want to make those phone calls? Like, no, thank you. And so when all of a sudden the conversation shifted that we're calling in to say, hey, how was the vacation? Hey, is your daughter okay after birthing the grandchild? And how is everybody? And everybody good? And are you going out to see him? And how are we still buying the car? Like, these are the things where we're checking in on how their relationship is doing and what they're doing with their life that they told us to do, to advocate. In some cases, to cancel and move things forward because something changed that we can't do it, or we're going to do it at a different time, or they changed their mind, or they're going to do this trip before they do that trip. And just check in on how their life is. And those check-ins, again, deepen that relationship. Yeah. And in the process, after those conversations have been had, you can ask the question, do we need to worry anything about the portfolio or any changes? Or, it's often like, no, because we just went through everything in their life that they would need money for, or they could be concerned about. And if it's all good, it's like, portfolio's good, you're good, great. We'll just kick it out a year or 6 months or whatever the service system is.
Yeah. Well, and that's the benefit of basically right-sizing your practice, turning on proactive service, getting more in-depth with your annual reviews, taking the information you've learned about your client in the discovery deck process, because then it allows you to reevaluate how you want to run the business, how you want to engage with your clients, and really kind of take that shift. But I think sometimes maybe people are hesitant to turn the tide, right? They're hesitant to say, I've not really been handling the relationship as well as I would like to. This is the direction I want to take it. What are advisors afraid of in making that pivot? What's keeping them from making that change?
Well, first of all, change, right? People just don't like change. I think it's some of the unknown. I think when the first, so a service system is where you're using technology, often some type of relationship management CRM tool, to alert you as to when you need to be contacting a client again. And I remember when I first put the service system together, it felt like daunting. Like I'm adding work to my schedule or adding things. And what we found is, by having a consistent rhythm for contacting clients, and it could be monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, annually. It's amazing if you actually ask a client how often they want to hear from you. They actually will tell you what they want their service system to be. That by having that system in place, the agreement with the client is, hey, I'm going to contact you based on our conversation. You said every 6 months is fine. If anything happens in the interim 6 months, I need you to let me know. And if we don't hear from each other, we're just going to assume nothing's changed. Mm-hmm. But then every 6 months, we're going to check in. And then letting them know, like, hey, our next check-in is November. Like, so just like the dentist tells you, like, when your next checkup is, somewhere in your head, you filed away when that's going to be. And so if you thought about your advisor or you haven't heard from them, it's like, oh yeah, it's coming up in maybe November. I know it's got booked or what have you. The other part was figuring out, okay, if you're gonna have this proactive service, what are you gonna talk about? Which is, again, here's the total relationship. That's what you talk about, and what's changed in their life, and what's going on, and what's changed going forward, and trying to get granular and focused on 6 to 12 months into the future, because that's where the rubber meets the road with finances and planning. I also made the mistake. The industry says you should, service your biggest clients more, or they get this rating system like, AAA, AA, single A, D, A, B, C, D, F, Y. Like, it's just like
pick a letter, classify it by top down.
Yeah, classifying clients and trying to create some standardization off of money. So we made that mistake. And I remember one of my
clients. How was it a mistake?
Well, or one of my clients, because she was one of the bigger clients, got shifted to like the highest service level. And like after a couple every other month phone calls or whatever it was, she's like, why do you keep bothering me? And I was like, it's like
lesson learned, to be a grandma. Thank you.
Yeah, like you're pulling me out of the garden. What do you want?
Yeah. Is there a problem?
And so that's when
why are you calling me so much?
And so instead of sticking all these people in a box, I just started, I asked the question, how often do you want to hear from us? And a couple things we learned from that. The biggest one is people go in and out of service. So instead of over servicing clients that don't need it, we wanted to have margin so we can service the clients that need the service. And what do I mean by that?
Yeah. And
In the
actually,
accumulation
Tyson, what I
phase,
really like is that you ask the client. You ask the client,
oh yeah, well,
how often do
shocking,
you want to
right?
hear
Yeah,
from us?
yes,
How much
yes,
is that just
yes.
typically dictated to them? Like they need to be
Yes.
looped in because then they're engaged.
hmm Yes, and everybody's worried about AI, but AI doesn't necessarily ask the questions. You ask AI
Mhm.
the questions.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to this. So the people go in and out of seasons of service. In the accumulation phase, to the extent you've changed a job, changed your marital status, changed the number of people in your family, to the extent you have kids, or having to step into the role of taking care of your parents, like you can go in seasons of years or decades that nothing's changed. The income hasn't changed. Your investment options in the 401k haven't changed. Your insurance hasn't changed. Your house hasn't changed. Your kids. So you go in and out of seasons. And what we'll do when someone comes on is we'll have several meetings to bring them on in the discovery process that we've talked about here to build that total relationship. And then we'll have usually a quarterly or semi-annually service system working ourselves towards one a year, explaining to them, hey, you're kind of in a season, nothing's changing. So we're going to switch and monitor this now once a year. If anything's changed on your end, let us know, so on and so forth. But if you have one of these life events, job change, life change, health, death, any of these things change, we will then reset however we need to service you as much as we need to until we get into that new rhythm. Somewhere around 2 to 3, 4 years before retirement, we might turn that service up a little bit, just make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing to go through that transition,
Yeah. Make sure they're
especially
on
the year
track.
they're retiring and the year after they're retiring. Those are the little rascals we want to service the most because the air of either retiring too early, getting a little silly and spending too much money because you feel like you deserve it because you're retiring, or you then retired, now you're going to spend more because you have this free time. Like those are where mistakes can be made that you can't fix decades later.
Yeah. You're
And so
better
we
off
tend to,
catching that early.
yeah, we just want to be monitoring that a little bit. And we tell them, it's like, hey, we're going to babysit you a little bit just to make sure you get in this right rhythm. And partly, ironically, some people, it's like, no, we gave you that money. You were supposed to spend
Yeah.
it.
Please
Like,
go
that's
spend
why
your
we,
money.
yes,
That's why you check
that's, like,
on them.
that's why we
A
gave it to
whole
you.
year they just
Yeah.
squirreled it away. And
Why
you're
are
like,
you saving that? Right.
please live.
Yeah. So, and then again, somewhere past 3 to 5 years into retirement, they develop what is their new normal in life, and they get in this rhythm of trips, rhythm of giving to the family, or rhythm of how they spend money, and and we will then start backing off quarterly to semi-annually, some cases back to annually. And again, as then health starts becoming an issue, we just turn it back on again. So instead of just basically throwing everyone in a box based on the size again of money or revenue, it's throwing them into where are they at in the stage of the life, where are they at in the consistency of their life, and where are they at given the fact that we've built this relationship and this knowledge, and then how often is that going to change that we need to be monitoring that.
Yeah.
And that's what our service system is. And then we again did an exercise where it's like, okay, in an ideal year, how many days do you want off? When? What months? Or what sections? Like, which holidays do you want? All right. How many days does that leave back? Like, what does your ideal week look like? How many appointment slots can you have? And we literally can mathematically back into, all right, how many clients can you service? And how many service slots do you have? How many clients do you have then to service those service slots? How many you need to leave open for new clients and those that have some emergencies? And then we make sure that we try and spread the service out so it's evenly throughout the year. We've done this wrong many ways. We tried to originally do it all in like the February, March, April tax season. And so we like tortured ourselves for 3 or 4 months and then had like 9 months of like it was easier. And then you kind of geared it back up. And it was just like this big stress that everybody went through. And it's like, okay, doesn't feel
Why?
fun.
We don't
Yeah,
have to do that to ourselves.
we don't have to do that to ourselves. It also helped us start realizing when on the team we need to hire someone else to come in and help with some of the service as those slots get filled up, or somebody's having more work than they have the capacity or bandwidth or energy to do well. And the other part of this is that I would have never believed, but a practice clients cared for well, the total relationship being applied consistently and tracked and monitored. When the markets blow up, when the world freaks out when the markets sell off or the kerfuffle happens that happens every couple months throughout the last 2 or 3 decades of my career, our phones aren't ringing off the hook. Because if you've checked in and you found out how they're doing and what they need and what's in the bank account and what you have in cash reserve and what the portfolio is for and how we're going to buy the car or pay off the debt or fund whatever's coming in the next 6 to 12 months, and it's known, and then a hiccup happens. Well, if you got 6 to 12 months, we tell clients, like, if we have 6 to 12 months to 2 years of reserve set aside based on everything you told us you needed, if the markets sell off, we don't need to react or worry. And we literally say that to them because the rest of it's long-term, and long-term can ride a lot of this urgent out. And more often than not, if we're getting a phone call when the market drops 1,000 points or something, these times that people have panicked, a client here or there would have been reaching out to ask us how we are doing. It's like, okay, yeah, like they wouldn't believe our phones aren't ringing off the hook. And I know most advisors are. And then the hard part is for the advisors that aren't applying this, and you're getting one client after the other calling you, and they're worried and emotional, and they feel loss, and you're feeling the revenue crunch of what the portfolios are doing. Like, you yourself can emotionally make the wrong decisions and panic or react to a client's emotion, to the extent that if you don't know this is all set aside and planned for and secured. And so it's just a much better way to manage portfolios, to manage risk, to make an impact on clients' lives, by having a predetermined way of building a relationship with a client that takes into consideration everything they have, hence total relationship, and then allows you to monitor that in addition to their portfolios and their financial needs beyond the short term of 12 to 24 months.
Yeah. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples just to kind of help get the advisor over the hurdles of objections. They're like, great, Tyson, that all sounds wonderful, but I don't have a team. What is your response to someone who doesn't have a team, but they want to make this change?
Yeah, I don't think you need a team to ask the clients, go about having a different relationship with clients. Like, if you have clients, you have, this is your problem to fix. The team becomes tools. Well, if you don't have a team, okay, well, take some of your revenue and go hire somebody, right? No one's going to do it for you. That's the first part. And if you don't want to spend your money, if you're not worth the investment, or you haven't made enough money in your personal situation to hire someone else to take the work off your plate, stop complaining about it, because you are the problem and you are the solution. But you can pick up the phone and have these conversations and write down what the clients are telling you, or you can pick up the phone and talk about portfolios and rates of return and things you don't control, or you can react to the phone that's ringing of people that are scared or worried or frustrated because they don't feel where they're at and have their back and have them covered. And to the extent they know that, in our experience, they don't call. And so that allows us to be proactive in what we're doing instead of reactive. And reactive sucks the energy out of most people and prevents the proactive call. So the excuse of I don't have a team is either go hire your team or spend the money to invest in yourself to bring in the leverage that comes from more people helping more people, or stop complaining about it and go do a different way of servicing the clients you have to find out, does that give you capacity you don't have?
Yeah. So for the advisor who's afraid that they're going to lose money in whether the client leaves because they don't like the relationship, or we've talked a lot about how we're not product focused and their practice is product heavy right now. How do you match those objections?
I've had a few over the years of clients that left that were product focused, or my job was to come up with the next hot idea, which is, my guess is as good as anybody else's, how that was going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
By getting rid of those people who often sucked a lot of time and energy and added stress to my day, it gave me capacity to go help other people in ways they want to be helped. And it's like, if someone doesn't want to tell me how their parents are doing, or their loved ones, or how their health is themselves, like, if they're that guarded and stand off-ish, it's like, do this yourself. Or that's not the client. That's not the practice I'm building. That's not the relationship that I want. And I would rather forego a headache than supposedly have more money, but have less time and joy in my life.
Yeah.
There's an old saying, I don't have this problem anymore because I did it enough that we don't have them anymore and we don't take them on. It's like you need to go fire a client a month for all the ones you said yes to that you shouldn't have, so you can create capacity to bring on the client a week that wants your services or
Mhm.
wants this total relationship.
Yeah. And the objection of they're changing their approach, that they weren't as knowledgeable now when they started their practice, and they don't want to look like a fraud. But now that they know better, they want to do better. How do they present that objection to the client that they were doing something wrong before? Because they might not have been doing something wrong before, they just didn't know better.
Yeah, one of the biggest mistakes I think advisors can make with this whole total relationship idea is they try and piecemeal it, like start today and just start doing it. When we hired a coach, and we didn't realize what it is today back then, but what we were doing back then was retooling our practice, and we literally sent an email out, or a letter at the time, to all our clients and said, for the next 6 months, we're effectively shutting our practice down to new business. We'll make some exceptions for referrals for family and friends, but basically, we're not taking on any new clients through the end of the year. There's 6 months. And the purpose of which is we're going to do some development and retooling, and we're going to represent ourselves to you in January of next year to try and enhance the level of service and the value we provide. Like, okay, people object to information you give them. No one's saying, no, don't do that, right? I'm not saying I'm not there to service your clients. I'm just saying I'm not taking new clients, and we purposely didn't. We made some exceptions, but purposely didn't. Like, we weren't soliciting or seminars or trying to build the practice. What we were doing was figuring out, what is this service system? How are we going to ask these questions? Where are we going to capture the data? What's the consistency of this? And how are we going to create predetermined portfolios? Basically, we're figuring out how are we going to implement what is this total relationship of the total life plan, the wealth plan, and the care plan. Then come January, it was sitting down, Mr. and Mrs. Client, we're going to go through a process where we would like you, excuse me, in January, we sat down and started meeting with the clients, and we decided we're going to go through a process to hire them back. Mr. and Mrs. Client, we're going to go through a process where we want you to decide if you would like to stay a client, and we're going to decide if you're going to stay a client. And then we are going to mutually work together going forward. And they kind of looked at us like deer in headlights.
Like, what do
And
you mean
basically,
not be a client here
yeah,
anymore?
yeah. It's like, wait a minute. And partially it was also to flip the script that we had control over
Yeah.
whether or not they stayed a client. I had gotten to the point that I felt I was beholden to these people because they gave me their money. And so then I got to take their order, or take their instruction, or take their attitude, or take their emotion, or take their lack of respect for me or my team or my time. It's like, no, this can be mutually beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
And we apologized that, hey, the industry is too money focused and too product focused, and no one controls that. And we're going to shift our focus to what we can control and what we can time, which is what your needs are and what you want to do in your life and whether or not you can do it.
Yeah.
And so hence the questions. We're going to go through the questions. We're going to build out the plan. We're going to relook at the portfolio. We're going to sign the documents to fix whatever we need to fix in the portfolio, to standardize things, to make this a consistent experience for every client, that every client gets our best idea, not our best client. Every client can get our best idea. We can implement it across all of our clients all at the same time, because we reached a point of realizing we can add more value doing it that way, because the advisor or the client that thinks their advisor can customize hundreds of clients' portfolios and monitor those
And
in a
monitor
market that
that.
changes every day. Can't do it.
Oh,
That's it.
it's ridiculous.
Yep. And
Yeah.
some clients and it was also this process that, hey, we want to be responsible for everything you have. So part of staying on as a client is to consolidate what you have or wherever else you have it, to the extent that it made sense from a tax standpoint and a cost standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the few clients we lost, we gathered all the assets that we didn't have, and we started over in the sense of positioning ourselves to our clients with what we're doing. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of advisors aren't able to get to that level or make that change because it's like a weight loss program, right? You're going to eat differently today and tomorrow, and then by the weekend you throw it up and you start over. You just lose discipline, or you lose traction, or you're still dealing with the client that's a pain, or the new client comes in and you just fall back into the old way of doing things. And what we were coached on is to take a few months and have that time to get it reset and then reposition each client. Go through a year of taking the time to reposition yourself as a client of, this is who I am, this is the value I bring, this is what I'm doing. Now, do you want to be a client? Because this is who I am, this is what we do, and this is how we add value.
And Tyson, was that at the same time that you made the decision to go strictly fee-based and discretionary? Because those advisors who are product heavy, they're not used to being fee-based and discretionary because they're product focused.
The answer to that question is yes. I don't think it's a matter of, I think you can do the total relationship and then land the plane on how the client's assets get invested.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can't do the consistent across the board raise cash for clients across the practice and or add to portfolios on the same day across the practice unless you get discretion.
Yeah. So Tyson, as we wrap up, what do you want to leave the listeners with today?
I once heard a sermon that races are won or lost in the pits. That it's where you have to stop the race car or the race of life and let it be recharged and refreshed, to be refocused, to basically then go win that race that you're called to win. And what we're encouraging advisors to do here is to take the time that you need to take to maybe stop what you're doing and retool and reset. Because if you try and piecemeal this, you're not going to make the impact or the change I think that you're wanting, or that I'm hearing advisors wanting. And for those that I've known that have done it, for the fact and how it worked for us, it's 3 to 6 months, 21 days to change a habit. Like you don't have to stop for a long period of time, but you need to be committed that you realize what you're doing isn't working and it's not fueling your energy. It's not making the difference for the client. It's not differentiating yourself. And if you keep doing it, you're just going to have the same result. Versus to allow yourself to digest what we're talking about here, make it your own, and go make that difference is worth the time to do. So,
yeah, the good hard work is worthy of the time, always. Thank you for turning in to episode 10 of the Total Relationship Podcast. If you haven't already, click follow or subscribe to know when new episodes are available. We launch them every other Tuesday. And head over to Tyson and I's LinkedIn page if you want to connect with us offline. And if you're really in the hunt for a group of like-minded advisors, head on over to Total Relationship page on LinkedIn. Until next time.